There's two ways of being. You can behold your store of value in fiat, and you're going to be constantly vampirized. The vampires have their teeth in your neck, and they're sucking you dry without you really even noticing that it's happening. And I found it very frustrating that no matter how I express it, some people will just never get it. And so I thought, I can give you some Bitcoin, but you're not going to understand it. Or I can burn Bitcoin, and then some indirect way, I'm helping your descendants down the road.
Hey everybody, this is the High Hash Rate Podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan.
And this podcast is just two plebs getting high and talking about Bitcoin, life, and the absurdity of the fiat world. Our guests don't necessarily get high with us, and you don't have to either.
But it helps.
All right, welcome back to High Hash Rate. Tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Spaceman. And what's kind of interesting about Spaceman is that when we came back, let me preface this a little bit. We sent out a tweet saying, basically, hey, we want to talk to anyone. Come reach out to us. And Spaceman was one of those dudes that, was kind enough to lend us his time and reach out to us. So thank you very much, Spaceman, and thanks for coming on. And how are you doing tonight?
Amazing. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
So yeah, he mentioned we kind of came back and we were getting new people to talk to, but one thing I'm noticing right now, and maybe I missed it last week, but it looks like we've got some sort of branded podcast frame or whatever going here on the video. Is that new, Mike? It's got the High Hash Rate logo above your head. Yeah. It's like orange. There it is. So This is this intentional or not? Because it looks intentional.
Look, Riverside has these options of putting logos and shit up on.
Okay. Well, I like it. I
was like, I'll just throw it up there.
Spicing it up.
I'm trying to spice it up, trying to get those views on the YouTube. You know what I mean?
So Spaceman, there's a ton of shit going on in Bitcoin, in politics, in the world. What's going on with you? Like how's your year been so far?
Well, I'm happy where Bitcoin's at. I've been in here for a while, and I've used Bitcoin since 2017. So right now I'm kind of living the Bitcoin nomad lifestyle, just living on Bitcoin. And
what did you do before you had Bitcoin and became a nomad?
I was a software engineer.
Okay. Like what kind of software were you working on? Do you have were you working for like a big company, startups? Like what was your
I was a tools engineer for a software defined routing company, and they got acquired. After that I left.
Did you like your job?
I liked my job until we got acquired by a bigger company and didn't really like it after that. And
were you distracted by, were you on Bitcoin Twitter and going through bull markets and you're like, fuck this bullshit. I'm going to go make memes and join, which you hang out with the Stackchain. So exactly. You obviously got involved in the culture and in the group chats and the meme gangs or whatever on Bitcoin Twitter instead of doing your software engineering work. Is that what kind of where you're like, fuck this, I'm just going to go out. I'm just going to pursue this.
That's accurate. Yeah, it got to the point where, I could keep doing this, or I could do Bitcoin and go down this hole and see what comes out of just putting all my energy into Bitcoin and Stackchain.
But Stackchain probably doesn't pay as well as being a software engineer for a company that's got acquired. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're killing it.
Pay, but in terms of the lucrative aspect, it's worked out a little bit better than sitting and collecting a paycheck over the long term.
Go ahead. You said you got involved in 2017. What was going on during that time that you sort of came into it?
Well, the group of coworkers I worked with, we were all fascinated by crypto, so we would talk about the crypto that everybody was buying, and that was my kind of introduction to Bitcoin at first. And over time, I come to realize that everything but Bitcoin is a scam. Uh, and I kind of diverted from where everyone else was doing. It's like, I'm not going to do shit coins. I'm going to just buy Bitcoin and hold it. And
Did you ever, after going like, we're like, all right, this is all scams, I'm Bitcoin only. Do you ever get pulled back where you were like, oh, the meme coin thing, this is fun? So, I mean, I'm not saying like you're shit, I'm just saying like there's always little things. Like Mike talked about it. He likes the little pretty lady NFTs. He's not a meme.
Love
He's
to
not
bring
an
this up.
NFT trader. He's not dumping on people, but he's got a weakness for a bunch of pretty girls in his NFT collection. He's a collector. He's a collector. And he likes to kiss his NFTs.
I'm an artist.
We
man.
talked
I'm an
about it,
artist.
right? He's an exact. Okay, yeah, whatever, right? But like, do you have, is any of it like for me? It was like the DeFi shit before I finally gave it all up for good. And I was just like putting stable coins on there, getting 10% yield. I don't know. There's always something that attracts people, but is there anything that you're like tempted by that you're like, I gotta, because it is hard. It's hard to stay. It's like, I always just have to remember, that I'm going to like lose a bunch of money if I fuck around with this. And that keeps me from going back.
yeah, I learned the lesson the hard way. I had a portfolio of these shit coins, and it kind of opened my eyes to how I'm just buying someone else's money that they made out of nothing. And the whole purpose of it is for them to just take my Bitcoin. And so whenever I think, okay, maybe ordinals is cool. Is it interesting what they did with Bitcoin? But it the NFTs are nothing
Right.
in my
Yeah. Like we've talked.
store value.
Yeah. We talked about it before. Like it's important, I think, to follow ordinals, like watch what's going on with that and like understand what they're doing, because what they're doing impacts, then you have to know how to adjust. Like some people run Bitcoin nuts so they don't tax the compute, their node. They're not like processing all this filter, this bullshit that they don't want on their node. They're saving space. Like there's things that you can do and things that you should do and know how it's being used. Um, but yeah, you don't have to trade the fucking the shit coins on there.
Yeah, it's a waste. It's a distraction, and it causes pain unless you're the guy who's making it. Then you're causing other people pain.
Before you ask your question, I was gonna say, but when you have friends and you're trying to orange pill your friends, and I think everybody's like, oh man, I hope my friend. I tell them not to get into shit coins, right? But they a lot of them do anyway. But it's starting to seem like, I mean, most of us already knew this, but it's starting to become like a conscious thing that this is really just gambling. It's like not investing. It's what they're doing is gambling. And that's a big thing outside of Bitcoin, like the rest of the world. Everybody's got DraftKings, everybody's like gambling on sports. So should I try not to orange pill my friends who like to gamble and only, because they're going to fucking get rugged by Hawk Tua on a meme coin if I try to get them to buy Bitcoin right now.
It's good to warn them and then let them learn the hard way if they must. But that warning will come back once they get rugged.
The hard way is always the way to learn, I suppose. I mean, that's how most of us
For
learn.
some people, yeah.
What was the hard way for you? You said you mentioned there was you learned your lesson the hard way. What was that?
Yeah. So when I got in 2017, I was going to buy everything, a little bit of this, that. And as I saw that, I just sat and watched and realized, okay, Bitcoin is the only thing that's really going to keep its value. And I thought, why? Well, because it's the only thing you have to actually work for. Everything else is printed out of nothing.
Oh, so that just occurred to you, this sort of
It
idea.
occurred to me because I lost a bunch of money on shitcoins.
You're like, oh, this is all, yeah. So did you, when you first got into Bitcoin, you were like doing this, you're buying everything. Were you like one of those people who knew, like, whether you studied economics or were interested in it, and you were like, all right, fiat, fuck fiat, they're printing money, inflation, central banking. and this is Bitcoin, or was it like, oh, this is the bull market, Bitcoin's going up, I'm trying to get in on this, and then did you realize that the shitcoins were fiat, or did you realize that everything that wasn't Bitcoin was fiat all at the same time?
It was a process over time. I didn't really dig into economics or how money or energy worked. I just kind of took for granted what I've been taught my whole life. And it was studying Bitcoin and learning about what I held and why I was holding it and why I wanted to keep it that I started to learn more.
Yeah, no, that's a lot, because like, once you get a little bit down the rabbit hole, like you said, you took all this stuff for granted, and you're like, "Holy shit, the most important thing in the world is energy." And I don't know shit about energy, I just take it for, then you're like, then the money, and then the banking, and then the bonds, how the bonds work, and then how this grid work. And you're like, "Shit, that's a lot of shit I gotta learn." It's
Yeah.
overwhelming a little bit. For that was how it was for me.
Yeah. It's eye opening. I don't know if I had not gone into Bitcoin, if I would have even bothered to learn how things really worked. I would just kept saying, "Oh, I gotta get something. I gotta invest in something that's gonna grow." And all I could do is take advice from people I thought were smarter than me. Uh, I got to the point where my idealism for Bitcoin came from I want something that someone else doesn't have a higher authority on. So Bitcoin is the only thing that you don't have to ask permission and it can't be diluted.
So that sovereignty is a pretty important aspect to you.
Yeah, it's necessary. Like if you can't use it sovereignly, it's impossible for it to actually uh, not be co-opted, not be controlled. Because Bitcoin can be used sovereignly, that gives it uh, its strength, its real scarcity.
Right. And I think to my point, which was about like when you realize like, oh, there's so much that I don't know about these critical aspects of society or life. And so when I'm trying to talk to my friends or like somebody who's same situation, they probably are taking all this stuff for granted. And I'm like, oh man, like you have to understand the sovereignty, but I don't think they even understand what that word means. And it's we take that for granted, and
That's true. That's fucking true.
it takes you so long, so far, or, so long and so much to learn before you're like, I need something sovereign. And you even start thinking about it and framing it that way.
Well, it wasn't until I got into this community that I understood how not sovereign I was, like how much I depended on all the shit around me. And then then you start to hear dudes like Rev Hodl, and you're like, oh man, I'm like way, way the fuck behind here. I need to up my game a bit. But so I see that you're based on your tweets, Spaceman. Based on your tweets, I can kind of guess that you're a maximalist. I would like,
Yep.
n-
I am a Bitcoin.
I would preface you as
Yeah.
or I would categorize you as a maximalist. Um, but I also see some conspiracy theory stuff, which I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah.
I
I think
and
conspiracy theory or just the awareness that there are conspiracies out there. And part of that is why I think Bitcoin's important. It's important for me because the control of energy, the control of money is the root of what makes these conspiracies possible. The control over populations by being able to dilute their money. Um, I think that's the worst one. If you can't steal people's money to fund stuff, to control them and to control narratives, control their minds, then
Right.
we're away.
It's kind of like, at least from my experience, it's, you hear a lot of conspiracy theories, before you really get into Bitcoin or whatever, and even after maybe you get into it a little bit. And you're like, wow, that's interesting, but like, I just don't understand why anybody would do that, or like like why would anybody do, or why would people collude to do this, or why would companies do that? It doesn't make sense. And then you start to realize like the game theory and the incentives of what they're doing, and how it's all like this race to get the cheapest credit and debt in the as the money printer's whizzing, because if you have to have that advantage. And so you kinda, like, you'll do anything to get it, and you'll set up, you'll just follow this crazy incentive path that takes you to this clown world conclusion. And then once you understand money and, like, all this the incentives behind money, and you follow the money, so to speak, you're like, "Oh, that doesn't even sound crazy anymore." Everybody thinks this is a crazy conspiracy theory, and I'm just like, "No, that is what I would have predicted would have happened in this situation." Because that is just the logical, rational way to do it once you understand the script that we're running on.
The clown world is funded by fiat. It is the way it is because fiat is printed for free. And so everything that stems from that is garbage.
Agreed. Do you think that the clown world is changing, or we're coming out of it? It's a question for both
It's
of you.
coming up against Bitcoin. That's the way I see it. It's like, okay, we're gonna keep printing forever, but eventually, people have an exit now. And so as more people take that exit, um, they keep rotating over, the fear ops and the money printing, but that's only gonna work as long as people continue to store their value in that imaginary paper currency.
Right. It's you say like it's what you think is happening is like the fiat system is butting heads with Bitcoin, but you could also frame it a bunch of different ways, and it's all saying the same thing, right? It's like in religion they would say like the fire is going to pass over you, and all that's left is your work and your deeds. Or you would say that like just there's a reality hitting in, like the clown world is running into energy constraints, market constraints, logistical constraints, trade, all this stuff is breaking down, and it's all coming to a head right now. So like all that clown world, the DEI stuff, it's facing the fact that we can't just print money for this bullshit anymore. And so they're cutting stuff. They're they're not holding prisoners, man. They're firing. Who knows if all this is real or it gets kept up? But Europe's getting their ass chewed out. They're like, we're not funding the wars anymore. Canada, we're about to annex them because if they don't fucking pay their tariffs, everything's coming to a head, and it's gonna happen the same way with the money system. The money system, the currency system may be the last card to go, or the last domino to fall, but it's all collapsing down into you're getting to the base of the problem, which is the money. And it seems like we're accelerating towards that conclusion.
Yeah, that feels right. But the thing I would say is that for me, it feels a bit like, especially with the election of Trump, that we are headed into a direction of positivity. Now, that could be argued easily, I'm sure. But I don't know, because of all the stuff that's surfacing, I don't know where. I'm kind of curious, like, what happens after, like, what do we bitch
No,
about
I
after
think no, I
after all
think
this
I
stuff
get
gets
I think
exposed?
I understand what you're saying, but I think you're making a mistake. I think that a lot of people are experiencing this like momentary relief where it's like we are not accelerating the wrong way at full speed anymore.
Mhm.
It's like the acknowledgement that this ship has to start turning around and things have to start changing. It's like there's that, like, all right, it's a good sign. But we're not just going back and like next month things are gonna be good. Like this is gonna be a painful taking the medicine is painful. It's gonna be painful.
Or not taking
We
the
are
medicine.
if we're like into Bitcoin, right? Like a lot of us are prepared for this moment and we're better positioned for this moment, but it's not gonna be like this jubilous easy path from here.
So you think that there's some kind of thing headed for us still? Like you think the pole shift is coming sort of deal.
Well, yeah, I think that that's possible. I think that we haven't saw the big, earthquake yet, and that we just kind of are prepared for it. It's coming, but also that, like when they say that like the sun when it dies, one of the things is it collapses and then it like expands out and it becomes this giant like fireball that like it's gonna ultimately will consume Earth when it does that. But it's like before it collapses back down and explodes. But we're kind of seeing that now. It's like you think that everything's turned around and things are going well, but like the president of Argentina just meme coin rugged like a country, collapsing their economy. Trump's been doing it. Melania did it. There's gonna be more of these meme coins. Dave Portnoy's involved. It seemed like the shit coiners and the meme coiners are getting to the point where they're like disgusted with their own selves. That's how bad it's getting. But I think we still got more to go.
It's a new class.
And we're in just like this weird the clown world, the volatility of events is probably still getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah. These shit coins are self-defeating. Most people, their experience is just getting rugged. And
Right, everybody's
get
desperate.
rugged forever, or they can look to Bitcoin. And that you can get rugged forever until you're destitute, or you can adopt Bitcoin. And that kind of the natural process, like Bitcoin will just win because it's
We're gonna
stronger.
have to go to a lot of people. I mean, right now, shit is bad depending on where you're at in life or what country you're in. So people are like so desperate to be able to afford anything, to ever have a house that they're gonna gamble on every fucking opportunity. Like if I get in on fart Bitcoin, if I put in $100, I might be able to get 10,000, 100,000, $1 million out of it. If I'm lucky, it's worth a shot. That's what they think. And we're gonna have to go to them and be like, once they've lost all their money, be like, I told you so to stop shitcoining. Now listen,
That
time
really
to
is the,
start. It's time to start being orange pilled. You probably say it nicer, but
Probably
feels
that's
like we're
that better
coming up
luck
to that.
going to a casino.
yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. That's that casino mentality. That's exactly what you walk into a casino and you know that, hey, I'm probably going to lose this money that I'm bringing in. The energy that I worked
Right?
to achieve,
They
I'm probably
boast
going to
about it.
lose it.
They boast about pissing their money down the drain, setting it on fire.
So you mentioned in one of your tweets, because I wanted to still dive into the conspiracy theory stuff. You've mentioned that COVID was the new 9/11. What did you mean? What is it? What do you mean? I'm
So,
curious.
in my view, 9/11, however did it, the point is, what came out of it, we got the Patriot Act, and we got locked down. Airports were never the same. And it was just this program of fear that led us down a certain path. And I see COVID as the exact same pattern. We didn't get some towers bombed, but we got a bunch of people's health ruined and, uh, you know, installed this program of fear that now you need pharmaceuticals, you need the government to use your tax money to pay for a vaccine or whatever. And it was a next level of stripping your rights away, essentially what we saw with COVID. And we're going to look back, right? And people, with 9/11 is never forget, keep remembering that you're in danger. And that's what COVID is. And you see it. It's with COVID-19. How many years ago was that? But it's still a topic, and it's going to be a topic, maybe as long as 9/11 was, and then they're going to come up with something new to keep people in that
Yeah.
fear mentality.
So that's where I think where Mike was talking about is starting to feel like things are better. I agree with what you said about COVID and like what it was going to lead to, or like the outcomes and like the excuses to strip away liberties. And I think that happened at an incredible pace, especially 2020, 21. And in some, but it does feel like to me that that is receding, and it feels like people, not all of them, but are starting to slowly, and it's becoming a more mainstream thing that like COVID was a psyop, the vaccines are bogus at best, and like malicious at worst, that it was created in a lab, it was some sort of malicious, or just something we don't want our tax dollars going to do, is make these bioweapons, that's what it was. And it's like, maybe even people are gonna start getting punished for this. So, while I agree, like, all those things, bad things happened, and we're not gonna get all of the rights back that we lost, it does seem like there's some sort of correcting measure happening right now, and people are hopefully on the path of, like, taking some of the steps that's necessary to hold people accountable and kind of prevent some of this stuff from happening again. Again, like I said, I don't think we're gonna get all of our rights back. That never works that way. But it doesn't seem like it's gonna be as bad as, whereas 9/11, it was like decades of just bullshit that kept piling up and nobody acknowledged it.
Maybe the turnover on the false flags is getting shorter, so they need to come up with a new one before people wake up.
What do you think about, I think we're maybe, if it's some sort of relay race type thing, where whatever COVID gave the government and the state an excuse to just, ex infringe on us and move in, and it's losing its power, AI is gonna pick up and gonna take the baton and be that tool that they use to creep into our lives. What do you think about AI, and, like, how do you view that in as well, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's coming. So how do you think about it?
So the way AI is being presented to us, presented to in the mainstream, is it's this mostly what people think of when they hear AI is a chatbot, something they could talk to and give them information. Uh, and it's more of like, now we have a source of truth. We'll ask Grok or ask whatever. And, I talk to the Grok, it's complete bullshit. Like, it makes stuff up. All of these things make stuff up. But what they want is people to go and ask and get their information from these sources now, because,
Yes.
well, it's a computer. It's not going to lie to you, but it
Right.
is.
Well, here's where I think it's even worse and dark, is that what you were saying about, you go to this chatbot, you talk to it, and you get questions from it, and, like, that is literally, yes, what is happening. But if you look even deeper, it's what was, the value and the power that made Facebook such a huge early success in, like, the social media giants, and made Mark Zuckerberg a billionaire, jillionaire, is that it was like convincing people to create these profiles, which are like dossiers. It's like, I live here. Here's all my pictures. Here's all my interests. Here's all the music I like. Here's all my friends. This is the entire web of who I am as a person, and who I like externally, how I externally express myself. This is the entire profile. And now you can connect that, and you have all this data, and you can just exploit the shit out of it if you are these big companies. And so what AI is doing is, like, it's now taking your inner thought. It's reading your mind. So it's figuring out how you solve problems, what your concerns are, what you're scared of, what your anxieties are. If you're a hypochondriac, if you are, what your interests are, and what you're curious about. And it's mapping this. And so when you say, like, it wants you to come and get all of its answers, yes, but it's also going to be one of the best resources to find out a lot of important things, a lot of valuable things. And you're going to go to it. Most people are going to go to it because it's going to be the best thing to ask about, or, to go learn from. And then, even if it tells you 99% of the correct information, even if they get it, whenever it needs to tell you the wrong thing and to lead you astray, it will. And you're going to, you're like, well, that's the best source of information I've got. So whatever that's saying, I'm going to assume is true, and I'm going to kind of follow. And it is this tool that they can use, but it's going to be such a hard addiction to break.
Right.
It's going to be so hard to get it figured out.
What happens on the back end with all the data that we're giving up through social media, just operating online, and, it can manipulate you perfectly in real time because it knows what to say and what not to say for you specifically. And it's a master at it because it just talks to a million people, figures out how to get them to ask certain questions, what will click, and it's going to master manipulation.
Exactly. And it's going to do just like the scammers on Bitcoin Twitter. You're going to get these AIs that are going to be like, I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin advice. It's gonna use your passion for Bitcoin to try to win your trust. It's gonna tell you people are gonna ask, "What do you think about Bitcoin, ChatGPT?" And they're gonna be like, some are gonna be like, "It's gonna tell me it's a waste of energy." But no, it's gonna be like, "This is a really good form of money that could potentially be the global reserve currency someday. It's the only crypto that is real. The rest of it's fiat." And you're like, "Wow." And then it's gonna tell you to go get the next booster for COVID until it figures out that you don't like that either. But it's going to use your interest against you. You're going to expect it to be adversarial to Bitcoin, and it's going to pretend to not be.
That makes me think of a question like, what would be the alternative to that technology coming into the world? Because
If
if
you're going to tell
everyone is
people not to use AI because it's a fucking psyop or whatever, not to trust AI, you got to give them something that's a better solution.
Yeah.
and is there a better solution?
So far, well, like I think that what you have out there, if you look in the open source and you really dig in, the pieces are there for someone who wanted a sovereign AI that isn't having biases baked in and isn't controlled by narrative controllers. You can say, okay, I'm going to go ask this a question. It's going to use reasoning and real facts to give me a good answer instead of going through with the number of filters that you have somebody at these companies saying, okay, now there's this list of things the AI is not allowed to tell us about.
Right. It's the open source component to like the models and how to uh, decentralize that stuff is important. But then there's also the way that those things learn. You can use the algorithm to like not filter facts or whatever, but it's learning based on like all the information it consumes. So like they're gonna astroturf the internet with bullshit to try to trick your even open source, allegedly, smarter, like you're gonna try to program against it, but they're still gonna be trying to throw it against you. Like you might not even be able to trust your own. You're gonna have to verify your own AI model.
Yeah. And
It's crazy.
you have to verify voices online. Is this a real person?
Right.
Or is this just an AI pulling the strings out here?
That's a nuts future to think about. When you
Or what
really, really
here?
open that up and you really start to think like who are the people that I'm even looking at online? Are they even real? Are the
Yeah,
experiences that I'm watching even real?
it gets down to we're gonna get to, maybe we're already there, but it's gonna get to a point of how do I know anything is real? How do I know anything is true? Anything? How do I verify any information? If I can't go outside and, and touch it, know it's a rock myself. Anything I see on a screen, any information I hear or see out of a device, how do I know if that's real? It's going to
Mhm.
be,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to change. It's going to be difficult.
In my experience, I'll bring up Stackchain. For me, that was a way of saying who's really out here buying Bitcoin and who's just a voice to spread a narrative because you see people say, I'm in this. I've really owned Bitcoin. I'm really buying Bitcoin. I'm someone who I thought, people say people say they're Bitcoin maximalists, but then they'll say, I'm all in on ETFs. And that doesn't check out for me. But when I look at the stack chainers, I think these people, I've been with them for a few years now, and there's been some fakers, but I've met some really genuine Bitcoin enthusiasts through that kind of method. I see it as a method of filtering out the noise.
So w- just to give a brief, explanation for anyone new coming into the space or listening, what is Stackchain and what's your
Stackchain
involvement?
it started as a Twitter thread where somebody bought $5 worth, and then we decided, hey, 6, 7, 8, 9, down to 2,000 something dollars worth of Bitcoin. And it's like, oh, we're taking this as self custody and we're buying. We started in the bear market a few years ago. It was really a whirlwind of an experience to be in a Twitter thread of people openly saying we're not doxing our stacks necessarily, but we're doxing, hey, we are real Bitcoiners.
Yeah, okay. That is I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the some people who would dunk on Stackchain or dismiss it. It's like that's one of the things they'd be like, oh, they're doxing themselves or they're showing, oh, I use Strike or I do this and this is how much Bitcoin I'm buying, yada yada. But what you're saying was that was kind of the point. It was like, I'm willing to put myself out there and I'm willing to like put it out there. Whatever risk that may come to me for this, I don't care because it's important to me. Like this is what I'm fighting for.
Exactly. It went against the ethos. There was a lot of pushback saying, you're doxing your stack. That's not the Bitcoin ethos. Don't talk about your stack. So we broke the rules there because for everyone had a different reason, but for me, it was because I wanted to find the real Bitcoiners because I
Yeah.
thought there's a lot of people out there that talk about Bitcoin that don't have any.
The Stack Chain, I don't know, community, you guys like there's a magazine now. What and catch us up, like what kind of grew from that original Stack Chain, that from that thread, and then it was like people, would have stuff in their bios. It was like a meme gang almost, like a 58K gang,
Mhm.
not as cringe or more cringe depending on your opinion.
Yes.
Um, and it became like kind of walk us through that from your experience, like how that grew and what it became and what it is now.
Yeah. We had the first 1,000 blocks. Okay. Blocks are 1, 2, 3. It's the post. Like, hey, I bought this much.
Oh, that's a
It
block. Okay.
was quite an exciting time, and we decided, hey, we're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna get together. We met up at conferences to people you chat with online. So it's very much like a meme gang. There's memes, and we went through pretty much what everybody would expect. People come in and take advantage of your transparency and the openness of it. We run into a lot of different characters through that maybe not otherwise, but at the same time, right now there's dozens of people that continue to be passionate about this project. Like the magazine, we're on the 6th episode of this magazine where it's just plebs writing
Yeah.
articles. Anybody can come in, and uh, I'm not as involved in that part of it as I was just in the thread, but I still collect them. And
Yeah, I've got an edition. I gotta remember which one it was upstairs, but um what about once you kind of had this movement that was going and Stack Chain had basically taken off. So I think I posted I tried to get in the Stack Chain a couple times and I'm in one of the forked, threads that isn't in the official Stack Chain, but um people who wanted to come and be a part of Stack Chain who were just kind of like you said, like maybe LARPers or scammers even, or just somebody who's just like trying to use the platform just for very selfish, not real reasons. How do how do you like filter that out? How do you deal with how do you keep that community strong when you've got all these crazy branches that are like kind of claiming to be Stack Chain, but they don't really represent you?
we fork them. So if a shitcoiner comes and says, I'm going to buy this block, and they start buying blocks, we'll say, no, you're not on it. And We're gonna fight you so that you can't be on the chain.
Yeah.
Uh,
Have you ever had anybody come in like
whoa.
.eth retards and like they're like, we're the wrapped Bitcoin stack chain and we are gonna get in on this block as a wrapped Bitcoin transaction. You're like, fuck you, you're not compatible.
You know, we had one shitcoiner try once, and we forked them. But as it turns out, there's not a whole lot of conviction. There's not a whole lot of passion to evangelize when you're a shitcoiner. They kind of just want to pump their bags, and there's not as much cohesion because everyone's got their own shitcoin bag they want to pump. And so that's kind of what I didn't think Stackchain's really possible outside of Bitcoin because there's not that cohesion. You don't see people saying, I'm going to stack ETH. And now these days, there's all kinds of stacking groups on Twitter.
Well, all the ETH stack chains would be sharded. No,
Yeah.
Is it still going on? The Stackchain is still happening?
Still going on.
It's
We
expensive.
reached we reached block height 2,500 just recently, which means, you got to
That means to get on that, you have to buy $2,500 worth of Bitcoin?
Yeah, to get onto the main chain. We have any number of side chains that people have come up with to say, oh, and we don't want to participate, but we don't have $2,000 to throw around just for one Twitter post. So they come up with like, there's one.
Don't they do like they all combine?
They do combined. It's a whole system to it. So people will create a side thread where they start off at some other amount, and they're usually themed based off of the memes people want to make. And once they get the amount that they bought, that sums up to a whole block, sometimes they'll say, let's put it all together and post it to the main chain. So it's a way of sharing memes at the same time as continuing to stack.
Is that like Stackjoin? Is that what that is?
Stackjoins, yeah. Stackjoins is one of them. Sidechain are kind of what's driving it right now. There's micro Stackchain where instead of the $1, we started at a penny, and it's more about the memes. And then there's Coffee Chain. That's a big one that's been going for a long time. Music Chain.
That sounds like Stackchain ordinals. Like they're like doing their own like memes that they're combining on their blocks with like they're basically referencing something on the main chain and then trying to say that they're a little meme community. Yeah, it's not as bad because it doesn't make my node overheat, but
100%. It was just an organic outcome from all the fights we had about how we're going to stack on the main chain, and people say, oh, I'm just going to stack over here because I like the idea and I like stacking with my friends. So I'm going to do like an OG chain that doesn't even go on to the main chain anymore. And that one's going to.
It's crazy because I muted, because like I said, I was on a fork of the chain, but whatever, I would still be in the mentions of the stack chain. So everybody, it was a big thing. It was like, all right, I got to mute stack chain because it's just going to flood my mentions. It's so, if you don't have that, I want to put it in the show notes. So how do we find the original stack chain post, like the Genesis post? So somebody can go back, because there's so much shit on here. If you just follow the stack chain, right, and you can find all the different forks and blocks and everything, there's like just a huge index of crazy memes through stack chain's history, and that's really interesting. And how could people start finding that?
Yeah, the history's in our hearts now. Most of the blocks have been deleted. I deleted my original account that I stacked on.
Oh yeah,
and not, because it was fun at the time, and the memes, it's more of just like a legend now that we look back.
Interesting. The memes probably still exist, right?
Yeah,
the memes are what persists.
The memes come back.
Yeah,
at times.
That's crazy because that's like there's like evidence for all kinds of geological or things that happened in history, right? But like not really anymore. Most of it's gone or washed away or eroded away. The only thing we have for most of like a history at a certain point in the past is the lore, the memes, the stories, the biblical stories, the whatever religious text from back then. So that's what's like already what's left of some of the stack chain. It's just the memes, but they'll keep evolving in time. Yeah.
We get together. We're planning a get together again. We've kind of like forked conferences to to gather and just have that Bitcoin community. And
Did you go to the halving party in El Salvador?
that was the one I missed.
Okay.
I heard it was great. There was a lot of stack chainers there that I know and I've met in other places, out in Pacific Bitcoin and Bitcoin conference, but haven't yet made my way to El Salvador. Haven't done that pilgrimage.
It's dope. You should go for sure, especially now that it's before it completely like tetherizes or whatever. But no, I make fun of it, and it's easy to because the headlines it's like, oh, Bukele's giving into the IMF or the shitcoiners. But man, a lot of people criticize the top down, like Bitcoin legal tender laws, force everybody to use it. It forced the banks to learn it for the people. But it's like, all right, you can't force people to use Bitcoin. At least that's not the ethos to it. But at least Bitcoin, or at least El Salvadorans went from like the shittiest place in the world to have like this opportunity to like a bunch of people brought Bitcoin to them, educated, and not all of them want to use it. But a lot of them have had the opportunity, and a lot more use it now than they ever would have before. And I think a lot of the positive changes that Bitcoin brought to El Salvador and built in those people, they didn't go away just because they took the legal tender law away. So I think it's still a very Bitcoin friendly and
I mean,
nice place. You know what I mean?
It birthed an entire tourist,
Right.
attraction. No one really knew that El Salvador was like a country out there,
Right. Nobody has to use Bitcoin in El Salvador anymore, but everybody can.
Yeah, it's always been opt-in.
I had something to add to that previous conversation, which made me think about when we were talking about the gangs. And now that I think about it, like, what we know about gangs in the past, like, dudes late at night going out, causing a ruckus or doing whatever they do, tagging stuff up, and how that could sort of bifurcate or split off into different factions because one dude thinks he's gonna, you know, get better than the boss. But it's so interesting that it always starts from this sort of root tree and it branches off in those kinds of ways. And even in this digital world or in Stackchain itself, you have these infinite amounts of branches that just keep on going out and going out and going out. I just think it was interesting.
Yeah, it expands fractally.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, exactly. What what are you kind of getting into now, or like what is Stackchain working on? Any like new creative branches, so to speak, like branching off?
Right. So I think one of the most exciting things that's coming out of like this creative community is the Stackchain magazine. Um, I haven't personally submitted my articles to it yet. I just read it. I read about it. Uh, in terms of
What are some like good? What are some of your favorite articles? Like, what would be a? Is there
my
any
favorite
theme
article,
to all of them, or is they all different?
everyone writes. It's kind of an open, write about whatever you want because uh we tap Bitcoiners to write. And my favorite, the one that's most dear to my heart is in episode 2, the burn chain article that was written by V. Did a great job. The burn chain is another offshoot, kind of a side chain to stack chain, and something completely independent at the same time because it follows a whole different. We're not really buying, we're burning Bitcoin there. It's kind of a thought experiment slash let's just see what this is and see what comes of it when we do it.
Wait. You're burning Bitcoin
Yes.
in the chain?
Yes.
What does that mean? Like you're sending it to an address that is no longer that you'll never see again?
Yes. There's
Ooh, that's a
different ways of
seems
burning
like
it, but
so nihilistic.
that is a common
Is
reaction
there a
when you first
ritual
hear
to it?
about it. It is
Man.
very ritualistic. You know, you can do an
Wow.
op return and pick a certain number of sats and say, I'm going to permanently mark this chain, this supply to say, I took some sats off the table for all of humanity for all time, and there's nothing you can do to undo that.
And it's also, I don't know, maybe nobody has thought this or felt this when they've done it, but when you have Bitcoin, like something you're always cognizant of or afraid of is like, what if I fuck up the address and send it to the wrong ad and then I lose my Bitcoin when I'm trying to do a transaction? Or what if I lose, something, or I accidentally send it to a burn address with the op return, or I mess something up and I lose it, or I just somehow fuck up my ability to have access to the Bitcoin that I've saved in the future. Because it is kind of scary, especially if you don't use, use your own node and like actually send a transaction yourself. A lot of people don't do that very often. To do, it's almost like it would spell away that demon or something, like to do it on purpose just a little bit to like, I know this is how this is how you burn Bitcoin, and this is how I won't do, a transaction in the future because I don't want to burn my Bitcoin, something like that.
Yeah, it definitely brings those questions to mind. It's a very thought-provoking practice, and that was kind of the point of it, because it was to say, okay, we've been stacking, and now we're memeing, and how can we take this to a new level, something completely different? And I saw that burn chain as an opportunity to do that, and it really, within the Stackchain community, uh, definitely rose a lot of discussions,
Yeah.
which was part of what I loved about Stackchain so much.
Yeah. So Stackchain in it of itself, when it initially started, was kind of this counterculture, rejecting the consensus, like of, what's how to be a good Bitcoiner or whatever, just by posting it, right? And then you've got this thing with like the burn chain. Um, what are so we this show we constantly talk about like how do you talk about Bitcoin to other people? How do you get other people who aren't exposed to Bitcoin interested in Bitcoin? But there's not enough attention maybe to and like what you're doing. How do you provoke thought? How do you uh get people to think differently about Bitcoin? Like how do you consider yourself like a troll or like
Well,
an
I guess
artist
I
or like
should
what how do
say
you think about it?
there's some troll aspect. I like to think of myself as like a starter. I have an idea, I propose it, and I show it and see, is there interest? Do people want to join me?
Yeah.
What do people think about it? So maybe I'm a provocateur. I provoke people to think.
Sure. Like do you know who John Carvalho is, Bitcoin Era Log?
Mhm.
And he doesn't do it as much anymore, but he would like start these morning where he would say, and it was usually something pretty factual about Bitcoin, but he would always frame it in a way that would be very provocative and piss people off and go against the narrative. And he would just get people arguing in his thread with him. And it was, you ask him why he do it. He's like, well, if I piss you off and troll you and provoke you a little bit with this, this question or this idea, if you want to tell me I'm wrong, you've got to go look at some code or you've got to go do some research. It's forcing people, it's like pissing them off and saying, I want to prove you wrong, and forcing them to go study or learn something that they didn't understand before, because they wouldn't have gotten mad if they understood what he was saying. So it's kind of like that, where it's Bitcoin is for anybody and anybody can do anything they want with their Bitcoin, including burn it forever. And there's nothing you can do about it. And, and I'm going to make a meme about it, and I'm going to make a reverse stack chain about it, and we're going to fucking celebrate burning Bitcoin, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to watch. If you
You got to
see it
sit
on
and
Twitter,
watch.
you have to read about it.
Yep, you had to sit and watch, and it was just another thing where I kind of had a little bit of like, oh, I missed that pissing everybody off with Stackchain, but now it's people aren't pissed off about it. They just muted it. So
Right.
let's piss off the Stackchainers.
How can we piss off people again?
Yeah, piss them off and say, make them think I'm a nihilist, and then question, well, I know he's not, so why is he doing this?
Because really the action is to provoke thought, right? That's really what you're trying to do, is to get people to wake up and to think about what they're looking at and what their daily activities are.
Yeah, and it had that effect, and it was really for me, because when I do it, I have to decide, why am I doing this? And I think, well, what are the outcomes? And over a long term, 1,000 years from now, it'll make, you won't see the difference, but I know it makes a difference. Because I'm not going to be the one holding that Bitcoin 1,000 years from now, but what I burned, I still maintain control of that 1,000 years after my death. Like, my will is enforced upon the chain in a way that you can't do any other way besides burning.
I've configured some UTXOs on the blockchain that you can never change. You will never be able to reorganize or spend those
Yeah.
without a ton of energy.
Yeah. And it's what it is. It compresses the energy that we put into Bitcoin. I think of Bitcoin as like a big balloon. And when you burn it, you are contracting, you're adding more pressure to it.
I've never heard that. That's an interesting image that you just pointed out. I've never heard it described that way.
Because it's a store of energy. We're all putting our energy into this network. Because, well, for me, I believe it's the way to free yourselves from the fiat parasite. And I don't think the fiat parasite's just going to die because of a president. I think it's going to die because every individual is awakened to it and makes the choice not to participate anymore. So it's going to happen. It's going to be generations. So it may never go away as long as humanity is around.
Right. Of course. And go ahead.
Have you always been this inclined to, wanting to expose the fiat parasite, or just diving down some sort of rabbit hole, or has that just happened when Bitcoin came into the picture?
I took it personally. When I began to see that there's two ways of being. You can behold your store of value in fiat, and you're going to be constantly vampirized. The vampires have their teeth in your neck, and they're sucking you dry without you really even noticing that it's happening. And I found it very frustrating that no matter how I express it, some people will just never get it. And so I thought, I can give you some Bitcoin, but you're not going to understand it. Or I can burn Bitcoin, and then some indirect way, I'm helping your descendants down the road to.
Yeah. Instead of a lot of people, from their perspective, it's like somebody's coming to them and saying, buy this thing that I already own, so you'll pump my bags. I'm telling you, this will be good for you and it'll be great for you, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to spend some money to benefit me and you. And what you're saying, more like what you're doing, is a more of this like selfless act. It's like, listen, I'm willing to burn real value to get your attention, to let you know, like, as I'm doing this, if you bought it, this would benefit you in the future. But I'm not asking you to pump my bags. I'm burning to kind of show you, like, skin in the game. Like, I want you to listen to what I'm saying.
It demonstrates the scarcity and the quality of the scarcity, that when you think, okay, you burn some dollars, they can just print some more. But you burn some Bitcoin, that's never coming back. And it does get people to think, or it gets people to stack sometimes, but you don't really know the effect of what you do. Like, not even 10% of the impact of what you're doing actually comes back to you in a way you can observe.
Right. And if you have whatever, a short amount of time to be somebody's first touch point into what Bitcoin is, some people try to get them to buy right away, or they try to give them sats. But what you're really doing is you're trying to pique somebody's interest in whatever it is they're going to check mark in their mind. And then they're going to go back to it and think about it later, and they're going to continue to go down the rabbit hole. Some people get 1 inch into the cave. Some people end up going all the way to, the theoretical bottom. But whatever you're doing, it just seems illogical on the face of it. Somebody's trying to pitch you their bags. Of course, they hear it. Everybody's trying to sell them something every day. They're just going to tune that out. But then you do something where they're like, why are you doing that? And some people will get mad. Why are you burning your money? And then they might dwell on it all day because they're pissed at you. They think you're an idiot for burning money. But now they're thinking about the scarcity of Bitcoin. And next thing you know, they might be down the rabbit hole themselves.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's kind of the idea of it, is when you see something and, you can talk, people will talk the ear off about Bitcoin all day. But if you see someone actually take an action with real money, which is kind of the concept behind Stackchain, is you can say, oh, buy, buy, buy. You can say, give people reasons to buy. But if you show them that you're buying and you invite them to do it with you, there is a real compounding effect that happens because people get emboldened. Courage is contagious. And so if you demonstrate something, that's really the best way, in my opinion, to get someone to do something, is to demonstrate it for them.
That's a great point. Yeah, Spaceman. Mike, did you have any final questions or any other things you wanted to get to that you're taking notes on over there?
I did, but then it lost me. I did want to ask you about your name
Sure.
and where did you get the name?
So the name, I'll just tell you, I made up Spaceman just because I kind of wanted to distance myself from the old name I used on Stackchain. I don't know, I'll just say it. My next Stackchain name was Skinner. And then I had another name I didn't name myself these things. I like to let people name me, and then I decide to just play that part. So someone called me Skinner, someone called me Burn Toshi. And so I played those roles online for a little bit. And now I'm Spaceman because my interest now is, how can I get to space? And I'm a kind of, I like to build my own spaceship. I like to explore. So it's kind of I named myself this so that this is what I'm curious about now.
Because names are always really interesting. You look
I
at
know.
someone's
Yeah,
name.
I know who Skinner is.
Yeah, I'm
I
Skinner.
remember
Oh,
Skinner.
Yeah.
You look at someone's name online and, you identify them with that, but there's a reason why these people or whomever, and I've thought about this with your name online, Dan, and my own, but you start to think about how did this person arrive at that name? And ever since I had kids, I've put a lot more emphasis on what a name is, and how it affects the person who it's attached to. But I did have one other question, and that was what do you do when you're not Bitcoining or stack chaining, or do you have I'm curious what's your life like?
Well,
Maybe I'm getting too personal.
no, that's all right. I've taken time to refocus because, I didn't just quit my job because I hated to work. It was because I had missed out on nature. I'd missed out on really living my life. So I've kind of reconnected with nature, and I really just, I look outside. I spend more time under the stars, sleeping outside, that kind of thing. Trying to
Touch grass.
reconfigure
You went
myself,
outside and touched
touching a
grass.
lot of grass. Yes, it's really been about touching grass for me, and uh, reorienting instead of chasing a paycheck and saying, because the fiat world's broken, and so what's going to pay isn't really what I want to do in this world. So I thought, I built, I bought a little patch of woods. I'm building myself just to kind of DIYing my life at this point to, I got a
Give
kid,
yourself
so
space.
I'm building, I'm building my own space, really.
There you go. Well, cool, man. I have to say thank you very much for reaching out to us, and very
Bitcoin is
happy to
not
have you
just
on
to save time or to buy the future. You can also use Bitcoin to buy some space, to get to space.
That's really the point, you can stack as much Bitcoin as you want and die with a bunch of Bitcoin, or you can use it as an opportunity to live your life different.
here. Amen to that. Cool, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say
enjoyed this conversation. Thank you guys. It's been great.
Of course. If people want to find you, where should they hit you up? Or
Good luck.
all right, cool.
Join the Stackchain. Stack a block on the Stackchain, and I will follow you, and I will
if you are meant to be found, you will be found. If you were gonna hang out with Spaceman, you're gonna go to space with Spaceman. Your paths will cross.
we'll create
if you go to the
Space
right,
Citadel together.
If you use Bitcoin and join the community, you'll find them.
Yes. Join us.
Cool, dude. I'll cut it. Thank you again for listening to the High Hash Rate podcast with Dan and Mike. If you want to learn more about the podcast and see what we're up to, you can find us at highhashrate.com. Or if you just want to speak to a couple of baked 80 IQ plebs, reach out to us at hello@highhashrate.com. Or you can reach out to us at the High Hash Rate handle on X. Later, everybody.
Holy Toledo!